Hi, Teri here from Stamping Magic. Welcome back to my channel. Today's project is a little gift box. I've used the Honeybee Home stamp set together with the Honeybee Blooms dies. And I've also used paper from the Brights 6-inch Designer Series paper pack. And I've created an impossible box. So for this one, the lid is attached to the base and you just push it up to open it and press it down to close. So I'll give you a top view. So this is open and then you can add or remove your gift or just slide it back down to close the box. The box measures 5 inches high, 2¼ inches wide and 2¼ inches deep. So let's get started. These are all the measurements you need for all the elements required to create this project. So if you're interested in reproducing it, take a screenshot so you can refer to it later. I'm going to show you 2 different ways to make this box today. Now, the first one uses one piece of cardstock and it's cut from a sheet of 12-inch by 12-inch card. Now we don't always have access to 12 by 12 card in the colour we want to use, which is why I'm going to show you an alternative method later. I've placed the card into my Simply scoreboard with the shorter side across the top, and I'm scoring down at 2¼ inches, 4½ inches, 6¾ inches, and 9 inches. Then I'm going to quarter turn my card clockwise and I'll score down at 2¼ inches, 7¼ inch, 8�3/8 of an inch, and 9½ inches. If you turn your cardstock back so you've got the 3 horizontal score lines running across the top and you've got 1 score line towards you at the bottom. Now I'm going to fold on that middle score line at the top and I'm going to mark along this edge. So you're folding on that second score line. I'm going to mark at the top in the middle of each of the 4 main sections. So the first one is 1 1/8 of an inch. And I'm just pressing my stylus into the top of this cardstock. Then 3 3/8, 5 5/8, and 7 7/8. So along that middle score line you've got the centre point marked in each section. Now if you haven't got access to 12 by 12 card in the colour you want, you'll need to cut 2 pieces from your standard size cardstock. And I'm going to use Balmy Blue, and this is the actual colour that I'll use for the base of my box. Now you'll have 2 identical size pieces. You'll place one into the Simply scoreboard with the short side across the top, and you'll score down at 2¼ inch and 4½ inches. Quarter turn clockwise. And then you'll score as before at 2¼ inches, 7¼ inch, 8 3/8 of an inch, and 9½ inches. Now I'll just repeat that for the second piece. So short side across the top, score down at 2¼ and 4½. Quarter turn clockwise and score down at 2¼ 7¼ 8 3/8 and 9½. Now similar to before, I need to mark the 4 main sections at the halfway point along that middle score line. So I'm folding both pieces on that second score line and then I'm going to mark at 1 1/8 of an inch and 3 3/8 of an inch on each piece. So 1 1/8, 3 3/8. So on each piece I've marked along the second score line the halfway point on each main section. All of these pieces now need to be cut, and I'm starting with my single piece. So I've marked along that second score line at the halfway points. I'm going to refold along that score line and then turn the cardstock towards me. So the fold line is towards me. Then I'm going to cut from each mark up to the end of the score line above it. So I'm making slanted cuts along that fold line. I'm also going to cut up the straight score lines to separate them. So starting at my mark, I'm going to cut straight across diagonally to the end of the score line above it, and I'm going to do that 4 times along the fold before I make my straight cuts. So I'm going right into that corner above it. Okay, once I've done that, I can cut up the vertical score lines, and this will remove the little triangular pieces. Now on the left hand corner you've got a little rectangular section. Keeping the cardstock folded, I'm going to remove that, and when I remove the bottom of it, I'm going to do it by a little slanted cut. So that's just on that 1/2 inch section on the side. Now at the base of that section there's another little rectangular section, and I'm going to remove that too, again using a little slanted cut on the 1/2 inch tab. So this is how things look at the moment. So I've slanted the top and the bottom of that 1/2 inch tab, and I've cut my triangles. Now I also want to make a little slanted cut at the top of the remaining 1/2 inch tab at the top, and then I'm going to separate the squares sections on the base by cutting up the vertical score lines. Now I'm actually going to remove the score line because this is what I like to do. So I'm making 2 cuts just to remove the score line. So it's a tiny little slither of card that you're removing. So I'll make 2 cuts up each score line just to remove it. And that's all the cutting complete. So I can now go ahead and fold on all the score lines and burnish them with my bone folder. Now when you get to the top fold score line of the 3, you want to fold it in the opposite direction. This will form the sides of the lid. Now when you get to the little tab right at the top, this also needs to be folded in the opposite direction. If you're using 2 pieces to make up your box base, then you need to treat them in a similar fashion. So you want to fold back on that second score line at the top, and then you'll cut from the mark to the end of the score line above it. So you're making diagonal cuts. And once you've done that, you can make a straight cut up the vertical score line just to remove that triangular piece. And then on the left hand side you've got the little rectangle, you want to remove it, making a slanted cut at the bottom. And then the bottom corner section is also a little rectangle that you want to remove. And once you've done that, you can separate the square tabs by cutting up the vertical scoreline along the base and removing the scoreline. And finally, a little slanted cut on the top of that little tab right at the top. And now I'm going to repeat that for the second piece, so it's exactly the same. So fold on the second scoreline and make your slanted cuts from the mark, and then a straight cut to remove the triangle. Remove the top rectangle and the bottom rectangle, making slanted cuts on the 1/2 inch tab remaining, and then separate the two squares along the bottom by removing the scoreline, and a little slanted cut right at the top of that tab. You can now go ahead and fold on all the scored lines and burnish them with a bone folder. And as before, when you get to that top scoreline of the 3, you want to fold it in the opposite direction. And that little tab right at the top also folds in the opposite direction to normal. Once you've done one piece, you just want to repeat everything for the second piece. I'm going to join these two pieces together by applying glue to the larger of the 1/2 inch tabs and the top tab. Now the glue goes underneath the top tab. Then you place your second section onto the larger 1/2 inch tab and underneath the little top tab. This piece is now identical to the first one that I created. So all the processing from now on is identical whether you used one piece or two pieces to create your box. I'm now going to finish making up the box, and the first thing I need to do is make sure that very top section is folded towards the front of the box. Now I'm going to add glue to the remaining large 1/2 inch tab, and then I'll fold that first section over and press the last section on top of it. I haven't added glue to that top piece yet. Now this section with the join is going to be my back. And when I come to do the base of the box, I'm going to fold the back section in first of all, and then add glue to the remaining 3 tabs. My side tabs will be folded in first of all, making sure that box remains nice and square, and then my front tab, which will give me a nice edge at the bottom of my front. Then I can just give everything a nice press from the inside. I'm now going to add my gift to the inside of the box, and this will help when I'm creating the lid and decorating the box. You want to close the lid now, and you just do that by pressing down gently on the top. Like so. Okay, once it's nice and neat and you've got just a tiny little hole in the centre, you can position your last tab. Now I'm going to add glue to this, but I'm not taking the glue right to the score line. I'm just leaving a little gap. Then I can tuck this underneath the side of my lid. Now you just want to hold it until that glue takes, making sure that the lid remains nice and square. Once dry, you can pull up on the lid and that will open the box. Now the first few times you do this, it might feel a little stiff and awkward, but the more times you do it, the easier it will become. This is the Honeybee Home stamp set. Today I'll be using this floral image and the bee and the little floral border. I'll be using Memento Tuxedo black ink for most of the stamping, but I'll be using basic grey for the little bee. I need just one of the bees, one of the large floral images, and then I need 4 of the borders. I'm going to put these on the sides of the lid. Everything will be die cut using the coordinating Honeybee Blooms dies. So you've got an outline die for all of these images. And once die cut, I've added dimensionals onto the back of all of them. To decorate the sides of the box and the sides of the lid, I've got some pieces of Daffodil Delight cardstock, and onto these I'm going to layer some of the Daffodil Delight Designer Series paper from the Brights 6-inch paper stack. To decorate the lid, I've got a square of Daffodil Delight card and a square of the Daffodil Delight paper. On the back of these I'm going to make some marks. So I'm going to draw from one corner to the opposite corner, and it doesn't matter which way you go, just with a pencil. Now on the back of the paper, I've already gone ahead and numbered the corners. This is so I can put the piece back together in the order that it should go, so the design flows. And again, I'm going to make a diagonal line between 2 of the corners. It doesn't matter which way you go. These will now be cut in half diagonally, but I'll cut them in half between the 2 corners where I have not drawn the line. Okay, so I'm just lining up the points of this square on my guillotine, and then once I'm happy, I'll cut it in half. Now next, I'm going to cut along the line and cut each piece in half again. And this is why I drew that line, because otherwise it can be a bit tricky to line up. And if you don't want to use your trimmer or a guillotine, you can just cut along it with scissors. So now for each of the squares I'll have 4 small triangular pieces. So I'm just going to repeat that for the paper now. I can then go ahead and layer the paper onto the daffodil cardstock, and then I can place each of these pieces on top of the lid. And then I can add the other pieces that I layered earlier onto the sides of the lid and the sides of the box. And that's it, that's my box complete. It's very pretty. And remember, the lid will ease the more you open and close it. I have made a card to go with my gift box. Now, the sentiment I used actually comes from the Celebrating You stamp set, and I used the honeycomb folder to emboss my white background panel. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this project. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notifications bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. Bye for now.